Today, we're going to create a custom GitHub action using TypeScript. Okay, so we made a previous video and an article about GitHub Actions, about reusing workflows and steps. In summary, GitHub Actions allows you to automate your software development workflows, and customizing things like actions basically lets you put in functionality for your specific needs. So in this specific example, we're going to create a simplified, not complete GitHub action to replace a pull request review process. So we've also done a video and an article on some issues that we found with a code review process. And one way to fix this is with custom GitHub actions. All right, so let's get started. So the easiest way to get started is to use GitHub's own template to get started. Of course, we can go and, from the ground up, build up all these files, but oftentimes you just want to, write an action to do something specific, and it's easy to just use an existing template, especially since this template comes from GitHub. So we're going to follow these steps over here. We're going to use this template, create a new repository, specify the owner, repository name. We're going to say code review video because we're doing a video right now. And then create this repository. Creating this repository, okay. And then we're going to go ahead and clone this. We're going to say git clone this repository. All right, and we're going to cd into it, code review video. Let's make this a little bigger, okay. Next is we need to make sure we're running the right node version, because we're going to be compiling TypeScript, and we just want to make sure we don't get any weird errors. So we can see the node version required in this node version file here, .node version, which is used by the GitHub workflows, CI workflows. In our case, we're using NVM, Node Version Manager. So what we want to do is we want to create a file called .nvmrc. So we do keep cp node version to .nvmrc. And this is the file used by NVM. And then we can just run nvm install to make sure we're installing the right version. And then we can see that we're using the version that we need. All right, let's jump into implementation. We're going to install dependencies, npm install. And in addition to the dependencies that come with the template, we need one more dependency, and that is the Actions GitHub package, which we will use to get some additional metadata. So npm install at Actions GitHub. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull this up in my IDE. All right, so I basically pulled this up as a new project in my JetBrains WebStorm IDE. And what we want to do is we want to first adjust the name, description, author, and inputs of our new action. So let's go to action.yaml. And we got name description here. So let's just type in code review. And then description. Improved code review process. And then your author, your name. And then, so this template comes with a default action. But we're going to put in our own. So let's do GitHub token. because we need the GitHub secret token to use the GitHub API. GitHub secret token, and it is required, and we're going to delete the old one. We don't have any outputs. We'll delete that, and we'll leave this the same. And then let's go into our source file next, and we're going to modify the actual code. So if you look at index.ts, basically it runs the function from main. And this ESLint parsing error is because this IDE is looking for the ESLint file, this .eslint.rc, in the top level, but in the template they put it in a non-standard place under this GitHub linters directory. So we can go and actually update this just so we get rid of these squigglies. Settings, we want to do ESLint. We want to do manual configuration. That's correct, and the configuration file is going to be here. There we go. It pre-fills this, and it's smart enough to figure it out actually. So we press OK, and there we go. The squiggly went away. So we do run from main. So now we go to main, and this is where all the code is going to be at. So like I mentioned before, we do need to import one more thing. There we go. Actions GitHub, right? And let's just delete this part, right? We're gonna leave the catch part alone. All right. So what are we gonna do? All right. So first we need to get the PR number from the context or payload. So PR number, does this look correct? Context, payload, pull request, yeah, that looks good. And we expect this to run only on PRs. So for some reason, someone wanted to run, let's delete that. Someone wanted to run this action from a non-PR. We simply just return, like we don't do anything because we only want this to work, to fail specifically on a pull request. All right, so we got our PR number. Next, we're gonna put in some specific code to find the required reviewer. So I think a good flow to find the required reviewer is to see which files have changed in this PR, and then go up and look for a code owners or maybe a custom reviewers file that has the required reviewer, and look in that file and basically try to figure out and try to narrow it down to a single reviewer, because from a developer experience perspective, we want a single reviewer per pull request. That could be a single reviewer or like a group of reviewers where any one of those reviewers is enough to merge the pull request. But in this case, we're gonna simplify / cheat a little bit, and we're just gonna get the reviewer from a single file. So a reviewer, and we're gonna use this method from the FS package, import. We're gonna read file from FS, and we're basically gonna just read in. So we're assuming that there's a single reviewer in that file. For the purposes of the example, read file, and we're gonna call this file reviewers and UTF-8, and just trim it, just, you know, any new lines, etc. What if there is no reviewer? We would fail. If Not reviewer, no reviewers found. Does this look good? This is fine. A little more context here. Okay, all right, we got our PR number, we got our reviewer. So next what we need to do is get all the reviews for this PR so that we can look at each review and see if this reviewer has approved it. So here's where we're gonna use the GitHub API. Get all reviews for this PR. So this is where we're going to use the GitHub token input. So const GitHub token. Okay, looks good. And we're going to use this, OctaKit. This is the API that's coming from. Okay, so it's inside the GitHub library here. It also can be separately imported, I think, but this is fine. And then we're gonna have get the reviews. Wait, so that we wait for OctaKit REST pulls list reviews. That it looks good. Owner, we're getting the owner from the context, the repo from the context, and pull number, the PR number. Yes, this all looks good. What is this thing? Kill that. Okay, so we got the reviews. So we're gonna check. Okay, check this. Let's see. So basically, we want to loop. We want to loop through all the reviews, and then mark approved. An approved flag. Okay, let's do this. So we're gonna have we're gonna use a flag here. Let approved equals false, and then we're gonna loop through all the reviews. So reviews.data. For each, yes. For each review, yes. We're gonna check if this look good review.user doesn't like this because this user could be null. Okay. If the user is, so we're also assuming that this is the exact GitHub username of the reviewer. And review state approved. We marked the flag true, and there's no way to exit out of this loop, but that's fine. There shouldn't be that many reviews. And then we close this. Okay, so as you can see, this is also a simplified version. Obviously, we're not looking at timestamps, so it's possible to look at timestamps right now to be a little bit smarter, because what can happen is this reviewer could approve it, but then later put in a new review where they request changes. But in this case, once they approved once, well, what they could do is they could dismiss it, but sometimes they can't dismiss it because additional changes have come in. So this is definitely just an example. Pretty simplified flow here. All right, so now basically the last thing we need to do is fail the workflow if the requested reviewer has not approved the PR. Yep. If not approved, reviewer has not approved this PR. That looks good. I think once we set failed, we can return, even though this is not absolutely necessary because this is the end of the try here. Yeah, this looks good. All right, so we made two changes. We updated action YAML main file. Why is this showing up as green here? Index.js. Not sure what this file is. Not sure what this file is. Happy developing, okay. gonna delete this. If anyone knows why it showed up, yeah. Okay. All right, so I think we're ready for the next step. Okay, so in this repo, like the source code is here, but the actual code used by the action is in this directory, right? So in order to transpile TypeScript to JavaScript, we need to run another step so that the changes come over into this index file. And in this case, if we look at package.json, package.json, I think we messed something up here. We messed something up here because this is out of date. Let's go ahead and roll this back. Let's take a look at it. Yeah, this is more complex to complete. So let's try to reduce a couple of our steps. So somehow we maybe this step messed it up somehow. Cloned. Code review video. This looks good. Interesting. Oh, we want to do this, npm install. Okay. This looks good. Okay. Back on the right track here, we are going to bundle this. So this runs format right, basically just prettier. And then it runs this package step, and it uses this NCC compiler to compile TypeScript down to JavaScript. So let's run npm run bundle. Npm run bundle. Okay. Get status. And we see everything that's been modified. All right. Now to note, the template also has tests. So in this video, we will not be covering updating the tests. But for production, you definitely want to have tests. And that means that this exact action needs to be refactored a little bit to make it test friendly. And let's go ahead and commit this. My action looks good. Commit and push. It's analyzing code for a little while because it's also analyzing this generated index.js file. So for the IDE to be sped up, we'd want to mark this directory as excluded. That's why there's so many warnings, because they're coming from the this directory. Commit anyway and push. All right, so now we have built and released our GitHub action. And one additional note about this is it's also possible to set up your IDE to always run npm run bundle. You can also use a pre-commit hook maybe to do this check, or just rely on your GitHub workflows, because this comes with a workflow check dist that runs npm run bundle and then compares the result to make sure that, I mean, it's a little bit silly, I think, right? To digress a little bit, ideally this would just be generated automatically, and you wouldn't need to manually worried about this. All right, so we created our GitHub action. So now we actually want to use it. Yeah. So let's go into a different repo. So I have another repo I've been using for testing. And let's go ahead and add this action to this repo. All right, so we want to go to workflows, GitHub workflows. I'm going to create a new file. We're going to call it code review.yaml. Add it to Git. And here, name code review. So this name is pretty important because we're going to refer to this name in a couple places. Why is it complaining? It's missing some stuff. Okay. And we want to run this on pull request. Yes. You could also add manual dispatch here. Workflow dispatch, so that you can just run this manually just for testing purposes. You would just run it manually on a specific branch, on the branch that has the pull request. And then, like, you can add a few more things here, but let's just stick to the core, what we need. So we need the jobs, code review, runs on Ubuntu latest. This is good. Code review name. Name of the workflow is the same as name of the job. I think that's fine. Steps. So it's suggesting a few things. Delete the ones we don't need. Checkout. This is pretty standard. Because we need to check out, because we need to look at our reviewers file. And then this is where it's at. So code review action. And the key here is we do uses here. And we point to a repo. So I know my repo is get Victor code review, and this video is the one we created. And the reference, here's where you normally put in the version or the hash. But in this case, we want to just test what we have in main. So we're just going to use main as the reference. So you can point to your main branch here. With, because we defined our inputs. So yeah, this is right. GitHub token. This looks good. What's complaining about the space? Okay. Okay, so this looks good. So another thing to run the action that we need is the reviewers file. Remember, we kind of hard-coded the reviewers file. So we're going to go and create a new file called reviewers. And in that file, we're going to put a GitHub ID of someone. So I have a test account here that we're going to use to review our change. And you may have been looking at this and notice that we're saying pull request, but we also need to run this action on a pull request review. So once someone actually submits a review, we want to check if the reviewer submitted this review. But if we put in pull request review here, GitHub will treat this run as separate, from this run. So they'll show up on two separate lines. And this one will only run. So for example, we check in our pull request, right? This shows up as failed because no one has reviewed. Then the correct reviewer submits the review. This runs and shows up as passed, but this still has failed. So what we want is on a pull request review, we want to trigger this pull request. Now, luckily, someone has already solved this problem, but what that requires is an additional action here. So we're going to call this action a let's call it after review YAML. Add, and I will just refer to what we're going to do here, to the actual action itself. So let's go to it. So it's called rerun checks, and this is kind of recommended way to run this. And if we look at the code, actually, it's not that complicated. So if we are gonna go to production with our custom action, we probably want to just incorporate all this code or all this functionality, at least, in our action. But for now, we're just going to use this one. So let's go ahead and basically, based on that example, when we submit or dismiss a pull request review, this is important, this permissions. So because we need to allow this job to trigger another action. So that's why we need to set permissions actions to right here. We don't need any other permissions, just actions right. And we refer to that action and we pass it our GitHub token. And we tell it that we wanted to rerun the code review action. Okay. All right. So I think at this point we can actually create a new branch and commit this. So we're gonna create a new branch. We're gonna call it Victor Patch Video. Create a new branch. We're gonna commit everything. Test action, that's fine. I had the old files in here. I modified YML to YAML. I wonder if this will work. Let's try it. We can always come back and change this. All right, let's push. So before we open a pull request, we need to make sure our repository, this repository, is configured to require a code review, and specifically require this check to pass. So let's go to our GitHub user interface. This is what we just pushed, right? And for configuration, we go to settings, rules, rule sets, and we can create a new rule set, but I've already created one. So let's just take a look at it. Name doesn't really matter what the name is. The key is the target should be your main branch. In this case, I just say the default. Include default branch, which is main. And then the rules. The rules that we care about is this one. Require a pull request before merging, right? Because we don't want to commit directly to our main branch. We want a review to happen before we commit. And why the review happens is you open a pull request and we say required approval is 1. And for this demo, we're not checking any other check marks, right? So this is an important one that perhaps requires a little bit of discussion, but from a developer experience point of view, if I as a reviewer review another person's PR and I make a few suggestions, I need to be able to trust that that other person makes the changes and then, makes the changes in good faith, and then they're able to merge their code, because I don't want to double check them, if that makes sense, right? I want to be able to trust my fellow developers. Of course, the counterpoint there is potential security hole, and that can also be solved by automated tools or by another process. Okay, so this is one, we require one reviewer, and this is the other one, require status checks to pass. So what status checks are we talking about? We're basically talking about the workflow, right? And we can add a check here, and this, this, like I mentioned, the name has to be exact here. So code review, this is the name of our workflow right here. All right, so let's demonstrate how this works. I'm not sure why there's a pull request already, but let's create a new one. Comparing request test action, test PR for video. All right, create pull request. And we see code review got triggered. Let's go into the details. There we go, and this was the run, right? This is where the magic happens, and we know this guy hasn't approved this PR. So I have the other guy logged in. So let's see what happens when the other guy makes changes. So here we go. So first thing I'm going to do as the other user is I'm gonna request changes. And submit the review. And you will see what happens now is this rerun checks after review runs. So it runs first, and it's going to trigger this code review. See, it triggered this code review to rerun. This runs again. And I expect this to fail because this guy did not approve, so it fails. So now let's go ahead and approve. Review changes, approve, all good, submit review. And basically the same thing's gonna happen. Rerun checks after review gets triggered, and it's gonna trigger code review. Code review is running. Code review is running, and there we go. Everything is good, successful. So now, there we go. We have our own custom pull request review process, and we can merge this pull request. One last thing I wanted to mention is that we obviously want to kind of clean up the template, right? There's a lot of junk in the template that we want to clean up, like the README file, for example. README file, where is it? There we go. Like all this, right? This is specific for the template, so you want to, describe what your action is doing, etc., etc. Another thing that's kind of left over is this, wait file. Kind of want to clean that up and clean up associated tests, and then just like review the workflows that are being run, right? I mentioned that tests, we didn't update the tests, so that's one thing we're missing, which we expect to fail. Like these are not bad. Besides the tests, you could leave them alone, and in fact they should be running. So if we go back to our let's see, code review video, right? We refresh this. We go to this X. Yeah, so we see some fails. We got the test fail, that's expected. This lint fail. Yeah, so just for completeness, let's see what I messed up here. Why is lint failing? This is a little bit, this is like a super lint and includes these other lints. So let's see if we can figure out errors found in GitHub Actions, errors. Okay, so there's like a test action here. It's complaining about this test action. Got it. So let's, for completeness, look at it. Test action ci.yaml. Yeah, this is a test action. So another thing to update. Obviously, we ripped this out. So yeah, it's still passing, which is kind of strange. It's just a lint that's failing. All right, pretty lengthy video today. That's it for today.